All right, let's dive right in. We're going to break down a crisis that's happening right now in our 2026 scenario. It's all about a tiny, tiny strip of water that has the entire global economy in a chokehold. And it's kicking off the biggest energy shock we've seen in modern history. So, how on earth did we get here? It really all comes down to this one question. And it's a question with some pretty catastrophic answers. Because, for the global economy, that artery isn't just a metaphor. It's very real. It's incredibly narrow, and right now, it's clogging up. Get a load of this number 20%. A full 1/5 of all the oil and gas the world uses every single day has to squeeze through this one vulnerable spot. And in 2026, what was always a what-if scenario, well, it's become a devastating reality. Okay, so to really get what's going on, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the power, the economic energy that's flowing through this one choke point. We are talking about 21 million barrels of oil every single day. I mean, that's a number that's almost impossible to picture, enough to literally fuel entire continents. And the really crucial part? All of it, every last drop, has to go through that same narrow gap. So, where's all this energy headed? This is absolutely key to understanding the crisis. More than 80% of it is going east, to the massive industrial engines of Asia. For countries like China, India, Japan, South Korea, a free-flowing Strait of Hormuz isn't just important, it is the absolute lifeblood of their economies. All right, so all of this economic power is flowing through a place that's, geographically speaking, incredibly fragile. So to really get the crisis, we got to zoom in and look at the anatomy of this vulnerability. In the world of geopolitics, this is what we call a choke point. And honestly, the Strait of Hormuz is pretty much the most critical, most contested choke point on the entire planet. No question. Now, when you first hear 33 kilometers, that's about 21 miles, you might think, okay, that sounds pretty wide. You'd think there's plenty of room for ships to get through, right? Well, that's where the map can be a little deceiving. And boom, here's the real kicker. For safety, all of that massive tanker traffic is squeezed into 2 lanes, one going in, one going out. Each of those lanes is only 2 miles wide. All of a sudden, 33 kilometers feels terrifyingly tight. It's a funnel. And to make things even more complicated, you have to talk about who owns the water. This isn't the open ocean. It's a shared waterway, falling within the territorial waters of Iran and Oman. For a long time, passage was just governed by international law. But that's the very thing that's being ripped up right now. Which brings us right to the heart of this 2026 crisis. They're calling it the selective closure. And you have to understand, this is not a traditional military blockade. No, this is something new and a whole lot messier. This right here is the fundamental shift. This is the whole game. We have gone from freedom of navigation, where passage was basically a right for everyone, to something called conditional access. And that means passage is now a privilege that Iran can grant or deny based on a ship's politics, basically, where it's from and where it's going. So how are they pulling this off? Well, it's not with a huge fleet of battleships. It's with modern, sneaky tools. We're talking advanced naval mines that make the shipping routes impossible to ensure. We're talking about GNSS jamming that just scrambles a ship's navigation, satellite spoofing, and we're even getting reports of Iran demanding so-called security fees, turning an international waterway into their own private toll road. So let's look at the players in this high-stakes game. For Iran, the Strait is this incredible tool of leverage against its enemies. For the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, this is about economic survival. Their main path to market is being strangled. The U.S. is caught trying to protect global stability and freedom of the seas. And then you have huge customers like China and India just trying to walk this impossible diplomatic tightrope to keep their own tankers moving without getting dragged into the fight. So for the last part, let's zoom back out and trace the shockwaves. Because this is not just some regional spat. This is a crisis that is hitting supply chains, food security, and your wallet, thousands and thousands of miles away. For years, people always said, oh, but what about the bypass pipelines? Well, the numbers just don't add up. These pipelines, they can only handle maybe a quarter of the oil that normally flows through the strait. It's just not enough. Not even close. They're a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And this shows you exactly how the dominoes fall. See, it's not just about oil prices. The Gulf is a massive exporter of fertilizer, so when those shipments stop, farming supply chains in places like East Africa and South Asia start to completely fall apart. The line from a mine in the Persian Gulf to food shortages on another continent is terrifyingly short and direct. I think this quote just says it all, doesn't it? For decades, the entire global economy was built on one big assumption, that this waterway would always be open. The 2026 crisis has shown that to be a dangerously, dangerously flawed assumption. There is no backup plan. This is it. And so that leaves us with the big, terrifying, unanswered question at the center of this whole mess. With no real alternative route, and with the old rules being torched in real time, how does the world secure this vital artery before the patient, the entire global economy, goes into full-on cardiac arrest?